And so I was thinking it might be fun to talk a little bit about non-being and whether or not there is such a thing as non-being. I guess at first pass it sounds like it doesn't make any sense. It can't be something that is not. And yet it seems odd that, not only do we have the word not, we have senses of saying things are not. And we can, I look in the drawer and I can see the keys are not there. Now, the keys are somewhere, but how can their non-being just be disclosed as somehow there? What is non-being? I guess in some way this is an engagement that is trying to ask, is there something about the experience of non-being that it should tell us something about consciousness itself? This consciousness is nothingness. It's the way nothingness infects the world. It was Pierre in the cafe. Pierre looks around and Pierre sees that there is his friend, doesn't show up, and he keeps looking for his friend, and each person that enters into the cafe sort of projects the friend's image and then discloses that person who entered as not being that person. And so somehow non-being enters into human experience. I can pull up here. I have this little paper clippy here. Now, we could talk about the paper clip a lot of ways, different languages that it could be referenced in. There is an actual thing here, if we want to play hardball and say, there's boundaries. It's an electron swirl of, a cloud of relations, but we can at least identify, at least by our eyes and by our touch, a physical object. This could have different names in different languages, and even within English, I could call it, a paper clip. It could be called an adherent. There's different ways to talk about it. But when I start to get at its non-being, it seems that here it's a whole complex realm of there's something about consciousness that allows us to register what is not the case. So I can say, for example, this is not an eggplant. I can say that this is not 2,400 kilometers from Egypt. There's an infinity of true things I could say about it because of the is not. Now, it's odd. Is there such a thing as non-being? Does nothingness exist in the world? Well, someone might say, well, there's vacuums, there's absences of everything. Well, it's odd there, so there we have a case of physical vacuums in a system, but the vacuums themselves are always contained within something. That is, we see the vacuum as a vacuum. That's so different than saying this is not an eggplant. Right? A physical emptiness, I don't think is what we mean when we're talking about nothingness or non-being and the relation of non-being to human existence. See, these words are somewhat tricky because we have the word being, and then we have the word existence, and then we have the word nothing. And certainly nothing exists even though it is not. I think it's part of the way maybe Sartre would get at it. Nothingness isn't being, right? We don't want to say that it is, but nothingness exists. That is, humans exist, and we're able to experience what things are not. I talked about some of this in Fred's video on moral choice. I think we're able to experience some of the things we didn't do. Many people would argue that human senses of self, it emerged from the don't. See, there was a flurry of don't, is Kenneth Burke's argument. So there was this don't that went on, and the child was blocked and was told don't, and then eventually the child sort of emerges with a strong enough taste from the don't into the is not. Animals don't seem to be able to do, I mean, very smart animals, do they deliberate with either or options and then retain a notion of the is not? You know, if you say to your dog, um, you can go outside or have a treat, but you can't have both. Which one do you want? I don't know if the dog dwells in the non being. When the dog gets a treat, I don't know if it thinks about what the treat is not. I think humans, though, the human world is one that's just infected with nothingness. And it could be that God, so, you know, this is the roundabout argument here for negative theology, uh, God could never be defined or talked about in terms of anything that is. I mean, God, you know, if it works for people, God's the devil, God's nothing, God is non being, but it's a non being that makes room for everything. It's only as a gap, as a lack, as a fissure, as a hole in being that somehow everything could be made room for. And so the nothingness is no mere and ordinary nothingness. It's a kind of divine nothingness. Um, you know, for Sartre, it's a lot like D.E. Harding. You know, the fact that we don't have a head, that when we look out, our face is absent and we're just continuous with the world. Well, our face is a room making nothingness. It's it's part of the divine mystery of how the cosmos haunts itself as another. I think this, I guess, this issue of what is non-being, what is nothingness, and how are we to understand the fact that I think we do experience it. It's not some spooky phantasmagorical what you know mystery like, oh, what does it mean, why is it, but I think it's fascinating that it's not just the physical world that could be measured by the scientist. See, the scientist can predicate this substance, they can tell me what it's made of, but they can't by empirical test say what it's not. It only there's a dealing only with what's present there. I mean, the closest I think in some ways that science gets to the not is to the isn't yet. They deal with the not yet, and in that sense there's a kind of non-being. But the anticipated not yet of, you know, a movement. So I have a data stick and I'm going to move it here and I move it back. As you're anticipating where it's going, that is where it's not yet, notice it's always only wherever it is. I can say where it was and where it will be, meaning where it isn't now, right? Where it is not now. And as I'm doing these simple examples, there's a kind of infection of non-being into the world. It is ironic that I think we think of negativity and non-being as Satan and as the devil, but it could be that, yeah, God is the devil. God is nothing. God is the absolute nothing that is so much the nothing that it's only a nothing that could be absolutely everything. And it is absolutely everything because no matter where you look, you'll never find the nothing, but it's only by way of that nothing that you could ever find anything. Okay, thanks.